Hello everyone, I am Erika of BeadingSchool.com, and today I bring you a brand new tutorial, the romance earrings. It is a bead embroidery project, and it will certainly get you into a romantic summer mood. The earrings are extremely light on the ears, they are fast to stitch and really fun to put together thanks to this new colorful filigree component that I was working with for the first time when I was designing these earrings. The earrings are made with the bead embroidery technique, and it is a pretty easy project. But if this would be your first time working with bead embroidery, then I recommend to look into my article, How to Start with Bead Embroidery, on the Beading School blog, and also to check out the recorded bead embroidery lessons on my YouTube channel that are showing you the basics of this technique, and you can learn through them how to bead the traveler pendant and then apply the knowledge that you got there to this project, for example, and also to many, many more. And let's first talk about the material that you will need for this pair of earrings. You can find everything at our bead shop at beadingschool.com in exactly the same colors that I have used if you would like to recreate these earrings, but also you can find everything in all kinds of different colors, so you can put together your own color combination and make this design your own personal statement. And good to know, from beadingschool.com we ship worldwide, and you can get free shipping with track and trace if you order for 75 euros or more, and that equals 85 American dollars. And we ship to every country around the world. And let's see, what do you need for the romance earrings? So, of course, let's start with the very basics. And so, of course, you will need thread. And my preferred thread for pretty much everything, for bead embroidery, but also for bead weaving, is FIRELINE in black satin. And I like to use the 0.12 millimeter or 4LB size. You will also need, of course, beading needles, and I recommend the tulip beading needles in size 11. I like to switch to slightly thicker one, to size 10, when I am at a point that I have to push my needle through leather and ultra suede at the same time, for example. But if you are working with soft materials, then you can just stick to your size 11 beading needles and it will work. You will also need some scissors, and when I am working with bead embroidery, then I usually combine using different kinds of scissors. I have a pair that I reserve only for cutting fabric, because when I am cutting something else with the scissors, then the edges might go blunt. So I have a pair that is reserved for cutting fabric only. Then another one for cutting the FIRELINE itself, and especially with this project, as you can see that the edge of the motif is following the outer edge of the filigree itself, and then it becomes this nice and wavy shape. You will need to cut the fabric and the leather quite close to the filigree. It's nice to have these manicure scissors on hand too, and that's what really helps me with cutting out nice angles and getting close. So that is also very useful to have. You will also need foundation and backing, since that's what embroidery is about, that instead of just connecting the beads together to each other, you will first attach the beads, and in this case also this pretty colorful filigree, to a layer of foundation. And my preferred foundation is Ultra Sweet. You can learn more about it if you look into that article about the basics of bead embroidery that I mentioned at the beginning. And then for the back of the pendant, because after we have stitched everything to the front of the pendant, we are going to cover the back of the pendant to hide and also to protect the stitches with another layer of material. And there you can either continue using the Ultra Thread, or you can also use imitation leather or leather. It is up to you. In some cases, I like to add a layer of cardboard, waxed thin cardboard, in between the backing and the foundation. And what works well for me is, for example, paper from fancy chocolate or lasagna boxes, and that helps me to keep the motif flat, but also if I like to tie knots to just make it more secure, and also to give me the opportunity to cut out previous stitches. So the cardboard, it's also perfect for that, that if you put that between the foundation and the backing, then it will hide the bumps created by the knots, so they will not be visible from the back. And those are the basics that you will need. And then from the beads, let's start from the very middle. So I added a 4mm or SS16 Su1 rhinestone from Preciosa to the middle. I used the Crystal Starlight gold color in my own design. I am showing you now the 𝐍𝐿𝐀𝐓𝐄𝐋 in gold setting. They come also in gold setting and also in silver setting. You can decide based on the other colors that you are using. And what is specific about these are Preciosa crystals with flat back, and then they are set into a tiny piece of metal with prongs, and the prongs are holding the crystal, and then you have two holes on the back side of the setting running in a cross shape. So it's very easy to attach these Su1 rhinestones to any kind of beadwork. I love using them in my bead weaving, decorating the top of all kinds of motifs. I love using them in bezels, in bead embroidery. They are really, really nice to use, and they come in very nice colors. I have just received some purple velvet and ruby and these 𝐍𝐿𝐀𝐓 ones and Montana, so I can't wait to start using them. Then let's stick first to the big beads that I am using in this project and that you are going to need. So then I have some 4mm Bicone beads, and I use Preciosa Bicone beads. And these, which are closer to the middle of the motif, they are the light sapphire opal Bicone beads, and I think that they are super pretty. And then closer to the edges, I have the rose opal 2x AB. And this is, I think, what really creates this romantic mood, and it's nice combining the two kinds of finishes in one jewel. If you haven't tried Preciosa crystals yet, then I would recommend checking out one of our Preciosa crystal and pearl boxes to get a good overview of what Preciosa has to offer for beaders. Or just recently we created 2 new boxes that include only Bicone beads. The previous, the big box, it comes, by the way, in 6 different color combinations, and it contains pearls and cabochons and beads in different shapes and different sizes. And these new ones in the pink boxes that come in 2 colorways, the sun and the moon, those contain only Bicone beads in 3, 4, and 6 millimeter sizes. And all the big boxes and all the Bicone boxes, they contain enough of the colors that you can create actually not 1 but 2 pairs of romantic romance earrings from them. So besides the Bicones, you will also need CZECH fire polished beads, and those are, I use the white opaque Picasso 3 millimeter CZECH round shaped fire polished beads. And good to know that from all of these big beads, the Bicone beads, the 4 millimeter Bicone beads, and from the 3 millimeter fire polished beads, you need always 8 pieces for 1 motif. So I have 8 pieces of the light sapphire opal for 1 earring, so 16 together for a pair, 8 pieces of the rose opal 2 times AB, 16 for a pair, and again 8 pieces of the fire polished beads, and so 16 for a complete pair. And besides the so-called big beads, how I call them big beads, you will also need some seed beads. I prefer using MIYUKI, that's my favorite brand of seed beads. And this project, as you can see from the picture, it is just perfect for all kinds of leftovers. For example, if you have some leftovers from a kit that you have beaded already, and you don't even know what kind of color is that you have because you got it from a designer, or you just have some pieces left in a package, then you need so little for this that this is really the perfect for leftovers. So you will need size 15 round seed beads from MIYUKI. I have combined 2 colors. It's up to you if you would like to use 1 color or 2 colors. And I have used the matte nickel plated. The code is 190F, and I have used also a bit of the dark bronze, metallic dark bronze, and the code for that is 457. I used also around 11 MIYUKI seed beads, and that's the ultimate leftover place where you can use your leftover beads. You need only 4 pieces of these for 1 motif, 8 for the complete pair. And what I have used is the nickel plated. The color code is 190. And you will also, depending on what you would like to make from this motif, you can also make it into a pendant, of course, and you can maybe like bead a nice veil that you can attach to the top of the pendant. But if you aim for earrings like I did, then you will also need some earring findings. I used these rosebud shaped ones, and I think that they complement the design very well. And yeah, you can use earring hooks, you can use leather bags, you can use ear studs. That's completely up to you. And this is, I think, a perfect chance if you like big earrings, but your ears are sensitive, so they can't take like a big weight. So this is ideal then in those cases. And if you would like to make it even bigger as you might have noticed, I like big earrings too. Then you can also make it bigger by adding some filigree findings to the bottom, or by adding crystal connectors, glass drops in metal settings. That's completely up to you how you would like to personalize your jewel. I nearly forgot one thing. You will also need glue to glue on the backing. It doesn't need to be super strong. If you are saving your E6000 for some more important projects where it really needs to work, then this is the case when you can go for some cheaper, simpler glue, because the glue has to hold the backing temporarily, and then we will also attach the backing to the foundation, the two layers together, with small stitches all around. So that might be good to know. And for the very last, I have left this super nice colorful filigree. I am very, very happy with it. This is how it looks like on its own. It comes in different colors, and I have just started experimenting with it, but I already see many possibilities. I also wanted to show you just some other shapes and other colors that are available, and I am really curious that how will you use them in your beadwork. What I really love about them, that they come in so many turquoise and blue and green shades, which are my favorites, that we actually had some trouble naming all the different shapes, all the different color tones. This is of course the avocado green, but we have many different greenish and turquoise filigrees. These are, by the way, the same shape that I have used, as you can see. So it also comes in black. It also comes in this orangish, reddish. It also comes in white, in gray. So there are nice possibilities, and by playing a bit with the color of the Ultra Suede and with the color of these filigrees, I think it will be really an enjoyable project. So that's what you will need, and let's start beading. When working with bead embroidery, then I like to work with double thread. I always tie a knot to connect the two ends of this thread, and this means that by adding double thread into my work, it gives me additional security. And also, if I want to attach something really well or bead through a sequence several times, for example, until I fill up a line of seed beads, because then by filling up the holes of seed beads, the line becomes straighter and smoother, I can just do it faster. So I recommend you trying that. And I have already prepared my thread, needle, and also my piece of Ultra Suede. The Ultra Suede that I cut for my work is slightly bigger than the filigree that I am going to work with. The filigree is, by the way, 5 centimeters wide. That's about 2 inches. And when I don't know in advance that what am I going to create, because I am still like designing, then I like to leave a bigger piece of Ultra Suede in case that I know that what am I doing, then I cut my Ultra Suede, my foundation, in a way that I have at least a centimeter and a half all around the motif. Be careful, because the colorful filigrees, one side tends to be a bit edged, as you can see. One side is completely smooth, and actually I think both sides are pretty nice. This gives an additional texture, and I think it looks really nice. But so you can go either way, but yeah, try to go the same way when you are creating the earrings, so then they become identical. So I was using the smooth, I used my filigree with the smooth side up in my first one. So of course I will do that in the second one too. Usually when I work with filigree in bead embroidery, then I like to attach the filigree first to my foundation. However, in this case, I just don't feel that I want to pass with the thread over this beautiful light turquoise blue filigree. I don't want it to be visible at all. Maybe if I had the thread visible at all, maybe if I had crystal color thread, then I could do that. But I don't own crystal colored FIRELINE. That's so funny, right? So what I am doing is that I will attach the filigree right away with some beads. So you see this little teardrop shaped part and then two circles next to it on its sides on the very edge of the filigree. So this is a bit tricky. Actually, this is the tricky part, and that's why I recommend starting with another project if this is your start with bead embroidery. So what I am doing is I am right away adding some beads. I bead up through the foundation and through one of these little circles. I pick up around 15 seed bead, and then I bead back at the same place. When I pull my thread, then as you can see, the round 15 is holding my filigree to the fabric. And then, so I will add around 15 seed bead into both circles next to this teardrop. And into the teardrop itself, I am adding a 3mm fire polished bead. So I come up at the very edge, at this point of the teardrop, and then I pick up the fire polished bead and I try to go back through the filigree and through the fabric at the furthermost possible point. And then right away I even help with my fingers that I turn the fire polished bead in a way that it lies completely flat and the thread is hidden. And then I bead up through the circle on its other side. I pick up the round 15 and I bead back through this little circle. And then I bead all around the motif in the same way. What is tricky here is to keep the fabric nice and tight so it does not get wrinkled on the back of the filigree. So I'm holding it tight on the back side with my fingers. So this I think requires a little bit of practice with bead embroidery, so you have this feeling in your fingers, but it's nothing to be afraid of. Just do your best, and every stitch will take you closer to how you like it, the way that you like it. And without those practicing stitches, you don't get any step closer to your goal. And there is no way to take a shortcut. Some techniques work easier for us, so maybe this is right away super easy for you. Sometimes we need to do our job, do our homework, and do it a couple of times before we would be completely satisfied with it. But patience pays off. Also, in the matter of like you are beading up from the foundation, from the direction of the foundation towards the filigree and towards the top of the pendant, And what I have found that sometimes it is not entirely easy for me to find right away the perfect spot where I want to come up. So sometimes, as you can see, I am demonstrating it, not intentionally, but I am demonstrating it. So sometimes you need to like try a couple of times until you find the perfect spot. And you see how fast I am progressing? That's also thanks to the double thread, that I just don't have to go up and down, but only beading through the bead one time, and 2 threads through the beads are enough to keeping it secure. And as you can see, I am constantly adjusting the fabric. It is tricky, especially since I am also talking in between. So that is something to be careful about. But I'm nearly done. And now that I'm getting close to finishing this first circle of beads, the round 15s and the 3mm fire polished beads on the edge, then I am keeping the fabric really tight. The Ultra Suede is a special fabric. It doesn't wrinkle, it doesn't fray. It's actually easy to clean too if you happen to spill something on it. So it's really nice to work with, and I can stretch it a little bit. So if you have a feeling that your Ultra Suede is a little bit wrinkled, then when you are doing the last stitches, then by pulling it and stretching it, you can correct the wrinkles. So I'm adding the last fire polished bead. By the way, this is a color that I really like to work with. It creates a bit natural effect, even if the other beads are metallics or ABs, which are not nature inspired tones, I would say. And it is just easy to combine. I like it. So I have added all the 3mm fire polished beads and the round 15s all around. Don't panic if you see a tiny gap when you let it when you are just looking at your motif, and then you see that, oh, the Ultra Suede is sinking a little bit and it's not completely lying flat on the back of the filigree. Do not panic. As we are adding more and more beads all around, we are going to attach it, secure it at many more places. So we will correct that little gap between the fabric and the filigree. I like to add knots after every circle, every sequence that I am doing. The idea, it came actually from my husband, Adam. You might know him as the IT guy at beadingschool.com, because once when I was struggling and I was like redoing something again and again, then he just he's really involved with my work, and he really motivates me, and he likes what I am doing and cares for it and for you guys. And he told me, like, it's such a shame that you can't make quick saves like I can do in my work. And then I had the idea of making knots, and that work like kind of quick saves, because imagine that you add another circle of beads and another, and that third circle looks perfect, but then the second one doesn't. But then, since you created a quick saves, you can cut out the second circle of beads, so that makes your work a bit easier. So let's progress towards the middle of the pendant. Now I will be working with this super nice rose opal 2xAV Preciosa crystal bicone beads. They are just so shiny, I love them. And I will be adding them into these big circles in between the fire polished beads. And I will be always adding them in a way that the hole is directing towards the circle. So when I push my needle through the bead, then I'm pushing it towards the center of the motif, not sideways like this, but towards the middle. But this is something that is super easy to change. So if you like the beads sideways, and do that. There is no rule. Make it your own. So how do I start adding the bicones? I select the circle which is nearest to my knot, and I come up through the fabric. I bead up through the fabric at the closest possible point of the circle to the edge of the filigree, and I try coming up like in one line with this part where these two little ovals meet. That is like kind of the middle, or when I put my needle on the middle and on this part where these two angles meet, then the needle is showing me that where exactly should I come up through the bead up through the fabric. And then in this case, I like to let my bicone bead fall, and I try to hold it where it is supposed to go. And as you can see, I am holding my thread to the middle of the pendant, as the whole of the bicone bead should be directed towards the middle of the pendant. And this makes me super easy to find where do I want to bead down through my fabric. Please be careful when you are pulling the thread through the bicone beads, as those tend to have a bit sharper edges that you might be used to if you are used to fire polished beads or seed beads, for example. I have to say that I have a better experience with Preciosa crystal beads than the other brand that we were so used to before, but still, it's nice to be careful. So when you are pulling your thread, just make sure that you are not pulling it, for example, in an angle through the whole of the bicone. I will show you what do I mean, that don't pull it like this, because that damages your fire line, but try to pull your thread in a way that it goes directly through the hole of your crystal bead. Do you see how fast we are making this motif? I need only 3 more to add, and then I can start the third circle of beads. And of course, by some practice, you will not absolutely have to do the measuring the direction where the hole should go, because you will be experienced enough that you look at it and you know where to go up, where to go down, but that requires some time. So if you are only starting out on your bead embroidery journey, then measure where the thread is going, where the hole is directing. But if you feel sometimes I forget a very easy English word and then I feel dumb. If you feel safe enough with your skills, then just go on and do whatever is comfortable for you. So now I have a circle of fire polished beads, a circle of crystal beads. So finishing a circle, I tie a knot. I do a quick save. And now we are moving on to a part with seed beads. So I will be adding now these V-shaped little decorations. They are in one line with the fire polished beads. They will be added to this part with the two little circles and the two little triangle shaped holes. So in between the bicone beads. And I will combine two colors of around 15 seed beads for this part, and it's completely up to you if you would like to use one color or two colors. And how I am doing this? Again, I find the motif which is closest to my quick save, and then I come up through the left side circle, close to the metal. Then I pick up two round 15s in my first color, in my case the matte nickel plated, and one piece of the dark bronze seed bead in the same size. And then I bead down through a little triangle. So I beaded up through the left-hand side circle, but I am beading down through the right-hand side little triangle. Why? Because the dark bronze seed bead, it will be placed over the filigree itself, so I have to attach it also the left side and the right side little triangle. So to do that, I am now trying to come up, yes, through the left side little triangle. I bead through the bronze seed bead, then I pick up two of the first color and I bead down through the right side circle. And this is how it looks like. It can happen that you are satisfied with your little V decoration as it is, but if you want to make it more pointy, then come up through the left side circle one more time, bead through the first two seed beads that you picked up, skip the middle one, the pointed of the V, that is my second color, and then continue right away through the second pair of round 15s, and then bead down through the right side circle. So when I pull my thread, then you see that this little V became a lot pointier, sharper, nicer, but it's up to you if you want to do that or not. So to repeat this one more time, we have left side circle, right side circle, left side triangle, right side triangle. I bead up through the left side circle. I pick up 2 seed beads size 15 in the first color, 1 seed bead size 15 in the second color. I bead down through the right side triangle, and then I bead up through the left side triangle. I bead through the second color, the last seed bead. I pick up 2 seed beads in the first color. I bead down through the right side circle, and then I repeat the thread pass, kind of. I bead through the first 2 seed beads, I skip beading through the middle one, and then I bead through the last 2 seed beads. I pull my thread, I bead down through the fabric. This is how it looks from the back side at the moment, and already by adding more circles, just 2 more, well, 1 full and 1 little part of the second circle of beads, already the fabric got like closer to the filigree in the middle too. There is no gap in between. And I wanted to switch off my camera and do the other 6 V shapes without recording, but now I just love looking at the Bicones and how they are sparkling. This is kind of addictive. I will keep doing this without recording and come back to you a little bit later. I finished looking at my 2 AB rows of Bicone beads, and I finished adding the little V-shaped decorations all around. So I added 8 V-shaped decorations, just like I added 8 Bicones and 8 fire polished beads before. And now, instead of continuing in the logical way of working my way through from the very edge towards the middle, I will jump to the middle and I will now add the rhinestone, the Suwon rhinestone, and the seed beads around it, and some of them holding the rhinestone, some of them just purely decorative. And the reason is that once I add this other circle of Bicone beads, the Lights of Fire Opal, another one of my favorite colors, then it becomes a little bit hard to manipulate in the middle of the motif, since the Bicones do have a certain height, and it can get tricky to move my needle exactly in the way how I want to move it. So let's start with the rhinestone, and let's start with the seed beads now. So I will bead up and down through these small teardrop shaped parts. I start by beading up through the outermost is that a word, point of one of these small teardrops. I pick up 2 pieces of my second color of round 15 seed beads. I pick up 1 round 11 seed bead. I pick up the rhinestone, and then I pick up the 3 seed beads, but in the opposite order. So first 1 piece of the size 11, and then 2 pieces of the round 15s in size 15s in the second color. And then I bead down through the teardrop that is exactly opposite of the one that I was beading up through. And now I am holding my fabric to the filigree. Of course, then I let it go just at the moment when I would push the needle into my finger. I am not a masochist, but it helps me to go through the fabric exactly at the point where I want to. So I add these 6 seed beads and the rhinestone in between 2 little teardrops. And then the rhinestone has 2 holes in a cross shape. So now I bead up through a teardrop at the very edge of the teardrop on its outer side. Then I pick up two size 15s, I pick up a size 11, and then I bead through the open hole of the suwon rhinestone. And actually this is the part which might get tricky if you would add the bicone beads first and then the rhinestone. And try pulling the thread to have good thread tension, so then everything is nice and neat. And after sewing through the rhinestone, I pick up again size 11 and then two size 15 seed beads, and I bead down through the filigree and the fabric on the opposite side. So I pull my thread, and you see I have created this little cross shape and the rhinestone in the middle. I think it would look also nice if the rhinestone was ruby or fuchsia or purple velvet. So then that would be more in focus, but I decided for this starlight gold, so it blends in kind of with the seed beads, but still it adds some sparkle. And as you can see, there are some more seed beads which are not connected to the rhinestone. These are just pairs of size 15s that I am going to add to the 4 remaining small teardrops that are not filled with beads yet. So I bead up through one of these teardrops. I pick up 2 pieces of size 15s in this first color that I have used. It was actually the second color. Yeah, sorry guys. I hope you could follow it or make your own version, however you like it. So I have the matte nickel plated 2 pieces, and then I bead down through the opposite side of the same small teardrop. And this is how I fill in pairs of size 15 seed beads all around the motif into the now 3 remaining little teardrops. I bead up on the outer edge of the teardrop. I pick up the 2 size 15 seed beads, and then I bead down in the innermost point of the teardrop. I pull my thread, and then I can go to the third little teardrop to add the third pair of size 15s, and then the fourth little teardrop, and the fourth pair of size 15s. And it's completely up to you that if you want to do all these circles of beads, if you want to add all these circles of beads, or if you are happy with a kind of airier, lighter design, you can personalize this in many ways. Before moving on to the last circle of beads, the Bicone beads in light sapphire opal, I am now again quick saving, and then I am adding the light sapphire opal beads into this mushroom shaped, can I say mushroom shaped? How do you like that? Mushroom shaped holes, but while the holes of the first circle of bicone beads were pointing towards the middle, I will turn these bicone beads sideways. So what I'm doing, again, I find the closest little mushroom to my knot, I bead up at the very edge, here at the point, I pick up my bicone bead. Again, I am careful not to pull the thread in a way that I would damage it. And then I bead down through the other side of the little mushroom. And this is how I bead all around the motif, adding bicone beads to the little mushroom-shaped parts of this filigree. My third one. My fourth one. My fifth one. After every stitch, I am kind of like wiggling around with the bicone bead just to make sure that thread tension is right and then it's not too loose. It has happened to me before that I have noticed that some of the beads were a bit on the loose side, and it luckily happened I discovered it before I would attach the backing, so then I just went back and I repeated the thread path to correct my mistake with the thread tension. And I'm adding the last bicone bead. Yay! They just fit nice and neat into this mushroom shade gaps sideways. So my last quick save. And now I am at a point that I'm happy with how I decorated the filigree. You can still add more beads. You can add, for example, seed beads into these gaps. It's completely up to you. I am happy with how it looks like, so I am now moving on to the part when I cut out the foundation. So I try to cut about 0.7, maximum 1 millimeter from the edge of the filigree. And this might seem tricky. It is a bit tricky because the filigree is not completely circular, but it has this all kind of decorations all around. So if we look at the finished motif, then we see that I created waves here, small waves and big waves interchangeably on the edge of the motif. So I would like to create now. So I am not cutting with sharp corners, but I am trying to cut it with these angles, and I'm using my manicure scissors to do that. This is a scary part, especially when doing it on camera. I have to have enough of the fabric so then I can still push my needle through it without crossing through the filigree itself. And what makes it easier is if I pull the edge of the ultra suede, and then I keep the ultra suede tight, and then I can cut it easier. But it can also happen that if you pull it too tight and the ultra suede stretches, then you cut too close to the edge of too close to the filigree. So you can also just practice on another piece, on some leftover ultra suede. This is how it looks like from the back side, by the way. So pull the ultra suede with your fingers, but not too much. Also, another thing that you need to be careful about, that it's nice to leave, if you have a long enough thread that you can still keep using it, then as you are moving around with your scissors around the motif, then don't cut your thread. It's not a catastrophe, especially if you have tied a knot, but it saves you a bit of time if you can continue working right away. So now the front side of the motif is finished, and I am now going to add the backing on the motif. As you can see, the first earring, it is covered from the backside with this soft leather in blue color to protect and hide the stitches. There is not much left from finishing the earring, and the next thing that I am going to do is taking care of the back side of the motif. When you are doing bead embroidery, then you always need, besides the layer that you embroider into, you also need a layer for protection, for actually hiding for aesthetic reasons and also for protective reasons, to protect the stitches on the back from getting damaged. And sometimes it's enough to directly apply the backing to the foundation, and this would be normally that case since the motif itself is sturdy enough. Even if it's bigger, it's like around 5 centimeters wide. That's about 2.5 inches. So even if it's bigger, then thanks to this filigree, it is sturdy enough. So for that reason, we would not need anything between the foundation and between the backing. However, when I put my layer of leather on the foundation, then I see and feel with my finger that the knots that I tied, they can be felt, they can be seen. So I want to hide them somehow. And my easy and fast solution is adding a layer of waxed cardboard in between the backing and in between the foundation. I use chocolate paper. This is a favorite from my childhood. Hungarian friends will recognize it. Or lasagna boxes, for example, are also perfect. So now I am using some ordinary glue. It's a strong one and it cures fast, but it's nothing special. I picked it up in the shop with household items. So in this case, when it doesn't have a hard job, since I will be attaching also the other layers with stitches, it just has to hold until the stitches are done. So I like to save my E6000 for more special reasons. So special cases. So I covered the backside of my motif with the glue. I did not cover it till the edges because I will cut the paper a little bit smaller. And now attach it to the paper. As you can see, I removed my beading board because it can happen that if a drop of glue falls on your beading board, then the special surface of the beading board could get damaged. I am now cutting out the shape of the paper, and I cut it actually a little bit smaller than the circle itself. So I am not following completely the lines of the filigree. I just cut it in a circular shape, and I make it a little bit smaller than the motif itself, so then I will not have to push my needle through the cardboard when I'm attaching the backing and the foundation to each other. And here it does not matter if it's not completely circular. What matters is that it needs to be a little bit smaller than the motif itself, and that it needs to cover the stitches that and the knots especially that I want to hide. So this is how it looks like at the moment. I can read now the ingredients of the chocolate. I don't want to look at it at the carbohydrates and and the rest. So now comes the backing. So we have two layers. We have the foundation, we have the waxed cardboard, which makes the motif sturdy and protects the stitch and the cut this out, please. Now comes the backing. So I apply again an even layer of the glue to the back of the motif. I like to control how the leather looks like from the front because there can be some tiny flaws. Sometimes bother me, sometimes don't. Depends on the size, location, and so on. So I glued on the backing now. As you can see, my double thread is still sticking out from in between the cardboard and in between the foundation. So I will be able to continue with it right away. Now that I have the third layer also, then I am going to cut it out again with my manicure scissors. And in this case, I want it to be exactly of the same shape and the same size as the Ultra Suede is. Truth to be told, my Ultra Suede could be a tiny bit bigger all around. I was a bit hasty when cutting it, I'm afraid. Actually, I was nervous for cutting it on camera. But yeah, it should be around 1 millimeter from the edges beside my view, but sometimes I manage to cut it smaller than 1 millimeter. But I will solve it by stretching the material a bit, by sewing the layers together. So in those places, the it's too small, then I cut just a tiny bit more of the leather. Otherwise, I am following the shape and the size of the tapestry. So this is it. I like to check it from the back side too, of course. Here I have a pointy part. Unless it's the back thing. So back to the beading board. Now I am going to attach the foundation and the backing to each other. My thread, still I'm working with double thread, my thread is hanging from in between the two layers. But if you need to start a new thread, then what you can do is that again, just start with double thread, tie a knot by connecting the working end and the tail, and then hide the knot between the two layers by beading through the ultra thread, and then you can hide the knot by pushing it in between the layers with the tip of your needle. But I don't need to do it now. So I am going to connect the layers also with using some size 15 seed beads. I use the second color that I have added, the matte nickel plated. First, I make a stitch without adding new beads. So I push my needle from the back to the front of the pendant, and when I pull my thread, then you see that there is a loop, and I go with my needle through this loop. So I have one stitch without adding beads. Then I pick up two size 15 seed beads, and again I push my needle from the back towards the front, about not entirely 1 millimeter from the edge of the motif, and the distance between the two stitches is about the size of one bead. So in this case, about the size of a size 15, but if you would use bigger beads for the edging, then this distance could be bigger. And now I only do this with this very first stitch. I want to connect the two beads to each other properly. So now I bead down through the first bead that I added, and then I bead up through the second bead again. And this way they will stand nice and straight next to each other. And now I can add beads one by one. I pick up a size 15 seed bead, again in the distance of one bead from the previous stitch, and about not a complete 1 millimeter from the edge. I push my needle from the back to the front, and then I bead through the bead one more time, the new bead one more time. And this is how I bead all around. In this case, since the edge of the pendant is not completely circular, it's not a straight line, then I am also checking it often on the front to make sure that it looks all right. And what I want to avoid is that I would push my needle to the front and come up through one of the holes of the filigree. I don't want to come up through the hole of the filigree. I want to keep the stitches on the edge only, in the fabric only. And sometimes you will need to adjust the location of the stitches as you follow the edge of this wavy motif. But otherwise, there is nothing special that you need to do to make it look wavy. By cutting the foundation and then the back side of the motif wavy, it will be wavy, but you don't need to do anything special while connecting the two layers to each other. So this is what I repeat all around, always picking up a bead, beading from the back to the front, and beading through the bead one more time. And this is how I continue all around the motif. I am nearly done with adding beads all around the edge of my motif. However, as you may notice, I ran out of thread, so I need to add a new piece of thread. I thought that it might be useful to see how I do that. The old thread is already trimmed, secured, woven in. What I have done with the old thread, when I got close to finishing it, then I was beading back up and down through the size 15s on the edge of the motif without tying a knot. And after I got somewhere here, then I just simply cut it. With my new thread, I am again working with a double thread, and I tied a knot close to the end. I tied together the working thread and the tail end. And now I bead from between the ultra suede and the leather. I am beading only through the leather towards the back, as close to this last bead as possible. And when I pull my thread, then you can still see the tail, this little part, and the knot. So what I'm doing is that I'm using the tip of my needle and I am pushing this part in between the two layers. So it's now hidden, and I bead up through this last bead. Okay, it sometimes peeks out again, so be careful about the end of the tail, so it stays where it is supposed to stay. And now I can continue with adding size 15 seed beads. Actually, if the tail thread really doesn't want to stay in between the two layers, like now, for example, then you can also like sew it to the motif by just adding the size 15s and then taking care of it that this tail thread, tiny tail thread, it stays in between the two layers, like, I mean, on the edge of them, and doesn't start to peek to the front or to the back. So this is how it looks like at the end. And after I added my last bead, I am going to connect it to the very first one by beading down through the first bead that I have added and then I bead up again through the last bead. So this is how it looks like. And what's left now is adding the earring component. As you can see, I have added this nice blooming rose shaped ear stud over a fire polished bead, and I need to find a fire polished bead where I can locate one size 15 seed bead that is in one line with the whole of the fire polished bead. So for example, here it would not look that nice because there are two fire polished beads on top of the whole of the fire, two size 15 seed beads on top of the whole of the fire polished bead, and not one in the middle. So I will need to bead up and down through all the size 15 seed beads on the edge of the motif until I get to this size 15 seed bead that is exactly in one line with the fire polished bead, and then I will be able to attach the ear stud in a nice way. In the meanwhile, I got suspicious, and when I checked the first earring that I have already completed, I realized that indeed I used only single thread for the edging and not double thread. So in the meanwhile, I got rid of one of these threads, and I will do my best not to break any beads while I will show you how to attach this cute rosebud shaped ear stud to the motif. First of all, I want to make sure, I will just grab my round nose pliers. First of all, I want to make sure that the loop of the ear stud is closed properly. Some of the loops can be closed, can be soldered already. Some of them come like this, that they can be open. That can be handy if, for example, you like to use so-called crystal connectors like this one, because then by opening the loop of the ear stud, you can connect it directly into the closed loop of the crystal connector. The crystal connectors nearly always have closed loops, at least one of them, one of the loops. So this is, by the way, another way how I have used one of these fancy filigrees, colorful filigrees, but let's put it aside for now. So I start by closing the loop properly by using my pliers, and then I am now exiting a size 15 from the edge, on the edge, that is exactly on top of the hole of a 3mm fire polished bead. And now I pick up two size 15 seed beads in the same color as the beads on the edge. I bead through the loop of the ear stud, and I pick up two more size 15 seed beads. And now I bead back through the bead from the edge that I was exiting before picking up the new beads and the ear stud itself. So as you can see, the four new beads and the ear stud in the middle, they already form a loop. However, we will fix this little loop a bit more in order from keep the motif from turning. So now I am beading up through a size 15 seed bead that is also part of the edging on the left side from the one that was exactly in the middle and where I attached the extras now. And then I bead directly into the extra beads, exactly in the order how I picked them up when I added them. So 2 beads, ear stud, 2 more beads on the other side of the ear stud. And now I am beading down through another size 15 from the edge, this time the one that is on the right side of the middle bead. So when I pull my thread, then you see that the motif is turning together now with the ear stud. So even if I will move my head while wearing it, then it will not face backwards. And now this was basically the last stitch that I have had to make. And now I am going to secure and trim my thread end only by beading a while through these beads on the edge. So I hope that you enjoyed watching this video. If you have any questions, then please leave me a comment. I am really looking forward to seeing your new earrings and to answering all your questions. And I am looking forward to seeing you again on the beadingschool.com page, on Facebook, in my Facebook group, the Beading School Club, or here on YouTube. And wishing you lots of fun and lots of creative ideas. Bye-bye.